I won the lottery. My parents wanted to receive the money. They said they were the real owners and that I had to respect them and give them all the money I want and let them spend my money. Welcome to Mr. Ink's Stories, and without further ado, let's get to our story for today. That morning, everything seemed normal. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and I was at home trying to decide what to do with my day off. Since I moved away from my parents a few years ago, my life had been a roller coaster of emotions and challenges. But I had finally found some peace. That is until the phone rang. I remember looking at the unknown number on the screen, feeling a twinge of curiosity mixed with distrust. I answered it cautiously. Me, hello. Voice on the other end, congratulations. This is the federal lottery. You just won the Mega Sena jackpot. I was silent for a moment, thinking it was some kind of prank call. But the voice continued, explaining the details, confirming the numbers, and instructing me on how to proceed to claim the prize. When it all sank in, my heart raced. I, an ordinary person who had never had much wealth, had just won a sum that would change my life forever. After the call, I sat on the couch, still trying to process what had just happened. I looked at the lottery ticket I had played out of pure curiosity the week before. It was real. I had really won. The initial shock gave way to nervous excitement. My mind began to spin with all the possibilities. Investments, travel, new experiences. The world was suddenly open to me in ways I had never imagined. I decided to keep the news to myself, at least for now. I didn't want the world to know right away. But of course, the news spread like wildfire. Within days, everyone seemed to know that I was the new millionaire in town. Messages from distant friends and acquaintances began to arrive, all congratulating me, some already suggesting great investments or profitable partnerships. I was preparing myself to deal with these new friendships when, one day, a bigger surprise appeared at my door. It was late afternoon, and I was at home, enjoying the silence and thinking about how life could be different from then on. Suddenly, I heard the doorbell ring. When I opened the door, my eyes widened. My parents were there, standing on the doorstep. Those who had not spoken to me in years, who had turned their backs on me when I needed them most, were now there, with smiles on their faces, as if nothing had happened. My mother, daughter. It's so good to see you. She tried to hug me, but I took a step back, the confused and cautious expression on my face saying more than any words. Me, what are you doing here? My father, always the most assertive, stepped in with an irritating confidence. My father, we heard about your good fortune, my dear, and we thought it was the right time to come together as a family again. The words sounded hollow, filled with a false concern that I recognized all too well. They had never shown any interest in reuniting the family before. The only thing that had changed was my bank account. Me, you've been gone from my life for years. Why are you here now? My mother sighed, putting on an expression of false sadness. My mother, we know we made mistakes, but we want to make amends. Plus, we want to help you manage this fortune. We don't want you to do anything wrong with the money. That was it. It wasn't about regret or wanting to reconcile. It was about the money. The same money that they always seemed to think they knew how to use better than I did. Me, help manage it? Are you serious? You think that after all this time without talking to me, you can just show up and tell me how to use my money? My father crossed his arms, his smile fading, replaced by a serious expression. My father, you have to understand that this kind of money is not easy to manage. And as your parents, we have the right to make sure you don't waste it all. Anger began to bubble up inside me. Did they really believe they had any right to my money, after all the years of silence and disdain? Me, you have no right to anything. This money is mine, and I will decide what to do with it. My mother tried to intervene, her voice soft but full of intent. My mother, daughter, please don't be stubborn. We know what's best for you. We always have. I laughed humorlessly, disbelief taking over. Me, you always knew. How can you say that after all these years? Where were you when I really needed you? Now, all of a sudden, you think you can come into my life and tell me what to do. My father moved closer, trying to impose his presence. My father, we are your family. We will always be here, even if you don't want us to be. We won't let you make mistakes that could have been avoided. I shook my head, feeling my anger turn into cold determination. Me, no you won't, because I won't let you. This is my money, and you have no control over it. Now, if you have nothing else to say, please leave. My mother started crying, probably an attempt to emotionally manipulate me, but I had seen it before. I didn't fall for it. My mother, you can't push us away like this. We are your parents. Everything we did was for your own good. Me, for my own good? You walked away when I needed you the most, and now you show up out of nowhere to try to benefit yourselves? No. If you really wanted what was best for me, you would have been by my side all this time. My father, seeing that his attempts at persuasion weren't working, changed tactics. His tone became colder and more threatening. My father, if you think you can just ignore us, you're wrong. We have our rights, and if we need to, we'll go after them legally. This took me by surprise. I couldn't believe they were threatening to take legal action to take my money. Me, you think you can intimidate me? You can try all you want, but I promise you I won't give up without a fight. If you want to fight, we'll fight. A heavy silence hung in the air as my parents looked at each other, probably trying to decide what their next move would be. They finally understood that I wouldn't be as easy to manipulate as they had expected. My mother, okay, let's go for now. But think about what you're doing, daughter. We're trying to help you. I kept my expression firm as they walked away, the pain and anger still bubbling inside me. I slammed the door shut, feeling a mix of emotions. Part of me was still in shock over what had happened, while another part was determined not to let them manipulate me. The next few days were filled with tension. I knew that this battle was just beginning. The tension I felt was not unfounded. My parents did not give up on the idea of trying to take control of my money. Instead, they began to show up more frequently, always making excuses to get close to me. On one of these forced meetings, they arrived with lawyers. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was trying to relax at home when I heard the doorbell ring. I opened the door to find my parents, accompanied by two men in suits. They entered without even waiting for an invitation. Me, what is going on here? My father assumed an authoritative posture, while one of the lawyers approached me. Lawyer, we are here to discuss your parents' rights over your newfound fortune. They believe that, as your legal guardians, they have the right to manage this money. I laughed bitterly, in disbelief at their audacity. Me, legal guardians? I am an adult. Have you lost your mind? The lawyer maintained his professional composure, but his eyes revealed a clear intent to win this battle. Lawyer, we understand that this is a delicate situation, but your parents are concerned about the possibility of mismanagement of the funds. They just want to make sure everything is used properly. My father nodded in agreement. My father, that's what we've been trying to tell you all along. We don't want to take anything from you. We just want to make sure you don't make mistakes. My anger was boiling over again. Me, if you were really concerned, you would have shown that before all this money showed up. This isn't about me. It's about what you can get out of this situation. My mother tried to lighten the mood, but her tone still sounded manipulative. My mother, honey, we're all on the same team. We want the best for you. Me, we're not on the same team. You want control over something that doesn't belong to you. And honestly, I don't trust you to manage anything. The lawyer interrupted. Lawyer, I know this is an emotional situation, but I suggest you think carefully before making any rash decisions. A legal battle could be exhausting and long. I knew it was a veiled threat, but I wasn't going to let myself be intimidated. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. Me, you can bring in as many lawyers as you want. I'm not going to give up what's mine. If you want to fight, you can come at me with everything. The lawyers exchanged glances, probably surprised by my resistance. My parents, on the other hand, seemed increasingly frustrated. My father, this didn't have to be this way, honey. You're making everything harder than it needs to be. Me, am I making it harder? You showed up out of nowhere, after years, trying to take what's mine. If anyone is making things harder, it's you. The lawyers whispered something to my parents, probably suggesting that they leave for now. They eventually decided to leave, but not before making it clear that the battle was far from over. After they left, I felt a weight on my shoulders, but also a renewed determination. I was not going to let them take what I had earned, even if it meant facing a long legal battle. The tension with my parents did not remain confined to the walls of my home. Soon, the entire town was talking about the family feud. Some sympathized with me, understanding the situation, while others, perhaps closer to my parents, believed their version of the story. Gossip spread, and I began to receive strange looks and even nasty comments when I left the house. But the worst was yet to come. One morning, I received official notice. My parents had indeed filed a lawsuit, claiming that, as my legal guardians, they had the right to manage my money. I knew it was absurd, but just having to deal with the situation was exhausting. I spoke to my lawyer, who reassured me that their claim had no solid legal basis. However, he also warned me that the case could drag on for months, even years, and that I would need to prepare myself for a long and grueling battle. Me, do they really think they can win this? Lawyer, probably not, but they may try to wear you down emotionally and financially. It's a common tactic in family fights involving money. I sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. Me, this was never just about the money. It's about control. They never accepted that I was independent. Lawyer, and now that you have something they consider valuable, they're trying to use it to regain control over you. I knew he was right, and although I was prepared to fight, I couldn't deny that I was tired. Tired of the manipulations, the threats, and the constant stress of having to defend myself from those who should be my family. The next few months were pure hell. My parents kept showing up at unexpected times, always with some new excuse to try to convince me that they were right. It got to the point where they started to pick on me, like spreading rumors about me around town and trying to paint me as an ungrateful daughter who was pushing her parents away out of pure selfishness. But I knew I couldn't give in. Every encounter, every battle, every small victory made me stronger. I was determined to keep what was mine and, more importantly, not to let them control my life again. Finally, after months of back and forth in court, the judge gave the final verdict. My parents had no claim to my money. The case was dismissed, and I was officially cleared of their ridiculous allegations. After the court ruling, my parents distanced themselves again, but this time I felt it was final. There were no more attempts to contact me, and the visits from the lawyers stopped. The battle was over, but it had left its scars. Little by little, I began to rebuild my life. I decided to make some investments, more for safety reasons than for the desire to multiply my fortune. I bought a new house in a quieter place where I could finally have the peace I so desired. And, of course, I took some time to travel, explore the world, and enjoy the good things that life had to offer. But, above all, this experience taught me valuable lessons about trust, control, and independence. I learned that those who should support us will not always be by our side, and that sometimes we need to fight alone to protect what is ours. The years passed, and the pain of family betrayal became a distant memory, something that, although it could not be forgotten, also did not need to be relived. I had learned to move on, to strengthen myself with experiences of the past, and to build a future that was truly mine. And so, as I looked out over the horizon of a quiet beach, with the sound of the waves gently lapping against the sand, I felt that I had finally found the peace I had been searching for. The battle was behind me, and the future, shining before me, was full of endless possibilities.
Feeling like an outsider in my own family, tired of being dismissed and forgotten. But now I'm going. Let's get straight to the point. My family always made me feel like I was different, like something about me just didn't fit in. Ever since I was little, I was the quiet kid, the one who preferred books to playing with others. My parents and brothers were always close, sharing interests and activities that never appealed to me. While they gathered in the living room to watch a game or chat, I would isolate myself in my room, immersed in a world that I had created. This feeling of being an outsider only grew with time. At family gatherings, I was the last one to be heard, and when I did speak, it seemed like no one really listened to me. They didn't seem to understand who I was, or maybe they didn't even want to understand. I felt like, to them, I was some kind of disappointment, an anomaly that didn't fit the norm of our family. My mom: "Why can't you be more like your brother? Look how sociable he is, always surrounded by friends." Me: "I'm different, Mom. I don't like the same things they do." My dad: "It's just a phase, you'll get over it. Everyone goes through it." But it wasn't a phase. As the years went by, this difference became more evident, and the distance between me and my family only grew. They continued to live their lives, each going their own way, while I felt more and more out of place, like I was watching everything from the outside, not really belonging. The breaking point came in my senior year of college. My parents and siblings were busy with their own lives, and I realized that I was alone. The feeling of loneliness and not belonging was overwhelming. It was at that moment that I decided that I didn't need to try to fit in anymore. I decided that I would live my life on my own terms, even if it meant moving away from my family completely. The decision to move away from my family was liberating, but also scary. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to find my own happiness, even if it meant following a solitary path. I rented a small apartment in a remote city where no one knew me and began to build a new life, far from the expectations and judgments of my family. Over time, I found peace in my solitude. With no one to judge me, I could finally pursue my interests without guilt or embarrassment. I immersed myself in my studies with an intensity one had never experienced before. Knowledge, which had always been my passion, became the foundation of my new life. I spent days and nights immersed in books and research, absorbing everything I could. This dedication began to bear fruit. Little by little, I gained academic recognition and eventually found an opportunity to turn my knowledge into something more tangible. I entered the business world with an innovative idea and, to my surprise, it took off. Before long, I began to make money, more money than I had ever imagined. Financial success came as a surprise, but a welcome surprise. With money came new possibilities. I was able to move further away from my old life and build something entirely new. I bought a comfortable home, invested in projects that interested me, and continued to expand my knowledge. However, with success came challenges. Although I was finally living the life I always wanted, the feeling of loneliness still haunted me. I had no one to share my achievements with, no one to celebrate my successes or to support me in difficult times. I had achieved everything I wanted, but at what cost? It was at that moment that I received an unexpected phone call. My mother. "Hi, honey. How are you?" Her voice surprised me. I hadn't spoken to my mother in years. In fact, I hadn't spoken to anyone in my family since I moved. They had never shown any interest in seeing how I was doing, so why now? Me. "I'm fine, Mom. Did something happen?" My mother. "We heard you're doing really well. Your sister told us you're making a lot of money. We're so proud of you." The word proud hit me like a blow. They never cared about what I did before, never showed any genuine interest in my accomplishments. And now, all of a sudden, they were proud? Me. "Thanks, Mom. But why are you calling now?" There was silence on the other end of the line, and I knew immediately what was coming next. "My mom, your dad and I were wondering. Maybe you could help us out a little. We're having some financial troubles, and we know you can help us out." Of course. It was always about money. The sudden concern, the renewed interest, it all came down to the fact that I now had something they wanted. It wasn't me they wanted in their lives. It was my money. Me. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I can't help." There was a long silence, followed by a response filled with surprise and disappointment. My mom. "But, we're your family. You can't just ignore us." Me. "You've ignored me for years. Now, I'm just returning the favor." My decision not to help my family was not well received. The calls continued, not just from my mom, but from other family members I hadn't seen in years. They all had the same story, all wanting to reconnect and restore family ties. But I knew deep down that it was all about money. My mom tried to use guilt to manipulate me. My mother. "You can't just turn your back on your family. We raised you, we gave you everything you needed." Me. "You gave me the basics, nothing more. You never really supported me. And now that I have something you want, suddenly we're a family." My father, on the other hand, tried to use logic to convince me. My father. "It's just a loan, your name. We know you can help us. We're not asking for charity, just a little help to get us back on our feet." But I knew that was a lie. They never intended to pay me back, and even if they had, it wouldn't change the fact that I didn't owe them anything. Me. "You made your choices in life, and I made mine. I'm not going to stand behind your mistakes." Their insistence showed me how much they underestimated the change that had occurred in me. They still saw me as the submissive son, the boy who had always been left out. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had found my strength, and I wasn't about to let them take it away from me. After so many failed attempts to get my money, my family began to change tactics. The calls, which had been cordial, began to become more aggressive. They began to accuse me of being ungrateful, of being selfish, of abandoning my family when they needed me most. My sister, how can you be so cold? We are your family, your blood. Are you really going to leave us in the lurch? Me, you've left me in the lurch my whole life. Now it's my turn to take care of myself. The tension between me and my family only grew. They began to badmouth me to other relatives, trying to paint me as the villain of the story. I heard reports that my parents were telling everyone that I had changed for the worse, that money had corrupted me, that I was no longer the same loving son they had raised. But contrary to what they had hoped, these accusations did not affect me. In fact, they only reinforced my decision to distance myself even further. I knew the truth. I knew I was never that loving son, because I was never given any reason to be. I was always the odd one out, the rejected one, and now I was just being true to myself. The situation came to a head when my parents decided to visit me, unannounced. They showed up at my door, their expressions serious, as if they were ready to intervene. "My dad, we need to talk." I invited them in, more out of politeness than anything else. I knew this conversation would be difficult, but I was ready to face whatever came. "My mom, we're worried about you. Money has changed you, and not for the better. We want to understand why you're being so stubborn." Me, stubborn? Or am I just defending myself? For years I've been ignored and left out. Now that I have something you want, suddenly you're worried. "My dad, we make mistakes, we admit it. But that doesn't mean you should abandon us. We're a family, and families take care of each other." Me, families take care of each other, yes. But you never took care of me. And now, you expect me to take care of you? I'm not going to fall into that emotional trap. The argument went on for hours. My parents tried every way to convince me, using guilt, logic, even veiled threats. But I remained firm. I wasn't going to give in. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me one more time. Finally, after hours of confrontation, my parents realized that they weren't going to convince me. My mother's face was full of tears, and my father had an expression of disappointment that I had never seen before. "My mother, so this is how it's going to be? Are you going to cut us out of your life?" Me, you've been out of my life for a long time. I'm just formalizing what was already reality. They left my house in silence, without looking back. I knew that would be the last time I would see them. The decision was painful, but necessary. I couldn't continue living under the shadow of my family's expectations and manipulations. I needed to move on, and that meant cutting the ties that had tied me to the past. After they left, I stood in the living room for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. The silence that followed was deafening, but also comforting. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was truly free. The decision to cut ties with my family brought me a peace I had never experienced before. Sure, there were moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if I had done the right thing. But deep down, I knew I had no choice. Over time, I learned to live with my decision. I continued to dedicate myself to work and school, expanding my horizons and finding new ways to grow as a person. The emotional scars I carried began to heal, and with them came a new understanding of who I really was. Success continued to be a part of my life, but now, without the burden of guilt or family manipulation. I was free to live my life the way I always wanted, without worrying about other people's expectations. Looking back now, I see that the journey was long and difficult, but necessary. I had to go through it all to become the person I am now. And although I lost my family in the process, I gained something much more valuable: the freedom to be myself. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. After the final confrontation with my parents, I thought things would finally calm down. But I was wrong. Soon after I cut ties with my family, the calls started coming in from all directions. Family friends, old acquaintances, people I barely remembered started reaching out to me, all with the same message. Family friend 1. "Hi, your name, how are you? It's been so long since we last spoke. I heard you're doing really well in life. Listen, I heard your parents are having some financial problems. Don't you think it would be nice to help them out?" Me, it's none of your business. And if that's all you're looking for, we should forget about this conversation. The reaction of shock and disappointment on the other end of the line was always the same. They hadn't expected me to be so direct, so firm in my decision. To them, I was still that insecure kid, always willing to please and give in. But those days were over. The calls continued, and the pressure only increased. Some tried to appeal to my compassion. Family friend too, I know your family has made mistakes, but no one is perfect. Don't you think you should give them a second chance? Me, forgiving their mistakes is one thing, but letting them use me is another. I'm not willing to be manipulated again. Others tried to use more practical arguments, almost as if they were trying to convince me of a business transaction. Family friend 3, think about it, your name. What's the harm in helping? You have plenty of money. It won't be missed, and you'll be able to sleep with a clear conscience. Me, my conscience is already clear. And just so you know, the money isn't the issue. It's the lack of respect and consideration. Each new call seemed to wear down my patience a little more. The insistence of these people, many of whom I barely knew or had never really been friends with, was suffocating. The fact that they all felt entitled to ask me for money simply because I had achieved success was infuriating. People started showing up at my door, trying to have a face-to-face conversation, as if that would change my mind. With each visit, my stress increased. Family friend 4, I know you're busy, but I just wanted 5 minutes of your time. Your parents really need help, and you're the only person who can do it. Me. 5 minutes? I've wasted more time than that discussing this issue. And my answer is still the same. I'm not going to help. My tone, which had previously been just firm, was now becoming harsher. The constant pressure, the attempts at emotional manipulation, all of it was starting to wear on my patience. I didn't want to be rude, but their insistence was pushing me to the breaking point. I started avoiding leaving the house, afraid that I would run into someone I knew who would start pressuring me. The texts and emails started piling up, each one with the same old rigmarole, and I simply ignored them. But no matter how hard I tried to isolate myself, the feeling of being constantly watched and judged continued to haunt me. There came a point where I knew I couldn't go on like this. The pressure was getting to me in ways I couldn't ignore. I was having trouble sleeping, feeling anxious all the time. The peace I had found by moving away from my family was crumbling, and I knew I had to do something drastic to get it back. So I made a decision. I decided to disappear for good. I began to carefully plan my exit. I sold my house, my cars, and other possessions I had accumulated. I transferred the money into several international bank accounts, ensuring that I would have access to my funds no matter where I was. And then, one cloudy autumn morning, I simply disappeared. I deleted my social media accounts, changed my phone number, and cut all remaining ties. Within days, I had become invisible to everyone who knew me. I rented a small house in a distant country, where no one knew who I was, and began to rebuild my life once again, now free from any connection to my past. The new life I had built was simple, but peaceful. Far from pressure and judgment, I was finally able to find the peace I had been searching for. I began to dedicate my time to hobbies I had always wanted to explore, such as gardening and painting, and I continued to expand my knowledge, now for pure pleasure. Of course, there were times when I felt lonely. But, unlike what I had felt in the past, this solitude was a choice, not an imposition. And, over time, I learned to appreciate it. My family, my old friends, they all became just distant memories. I knew that, for them, I was a mystery, an inexplicable absence. But for me, this absence was a constant presence of freedom and peace. I had finally found what I had been looking for, the freedom to be myself, without anyone's interference or judgment. Now, looking back, I see that this entire journey, as painful as it was necessary. I needed to go through all those hardships, face all those challenges, to truly find myself. My past, with all its rejections and pain, no longer defines me. Now, I am defined by the choices I made and the life I built on my own. And as hard as it was to cut ties with my family and disappear from the lives of everyone I once knew, it was that decision that finally brought me the peace and happiness I had always sought. In the end, what really matters is not what others think or expect of you, but what you think and expect of yourself. And I finally found the answer to that question.
I was called infertile by my mother-in-law, and my wife laughed at me in front of everyone. It was a warm summer evening, and Marta's house was filled with laughter and lively conversation. Family members milled around the living room, holding glasses of wine and plates full of snacks, as they waited for dinner to be served. As usual, Marta, ever the hostess, was at the center of attention, organizing everything efficiently. Lucas and his wife, Carla, were sitting at the table, listening absently as the conversation flowed from one topic to another. Suddenly, the subject changed to family life and children. Marta, with a mischievous smile, addressed Carla directly. "Marta, Carla, I'm starting to wonder when I'll finally have a grandchild. It's been so long since you've been married, and so far, nothing." Carla smiled, clearly not bothered by the comment. "Carla, Mom, we're waiting for the right moment." But Marta wasn't satisfied with this vague answer. She leaned forward a little, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Marta, well, I hope the problem isn't with our son-in-law here. Maybe he needs a little help, Maybe he's infertile." The table was silent for a moment, and Lucas felt the heat rise to his face. It was a cruel and unnecessary provocation, especially in public. Before he could respond, Carla let out a loud laugh. "Carla, Mom, you're impossible." "But who knows, right?" Carla's laughter echoed in the room, and Lucas felt the floor open up beneath his feet. The pain of his mother-in-law's comment was one thing, but the laughter of his wife, the person who should have been by his side, was like a knife stuck in his chest. He tried to smile to hide how much it had affected him, but inside, a voice whispered that something was deeply wrong. That night, after the party ended and they returned home, the tension was palpable. Carla went straight to her room, unaware of the impact her mother's comment had on Lucas. While she was getting ready for bed, he stayed in the living room, staring into space, his thoughts racing in circles. Lucas thought, was that just a joke? Or does she really think I'm a failure? If it were the other way around, I would never let her feel that way. He tried to push these doubts away, but they continued to haunt his mind. The memory of Carla's laughter, which had once been a sound that brought joy, now echoed in his mind as a reminder of what had been lost. The trust, the complicity, the respect, it all seemed to be fading away. That night, lying in bed next to Carla, Lucas realized how distant they had become. The physical space between them seemed like a metaphor for the emotional gap that had opened up in recent times. And for the first time, he began to seriously wonder if marriage was really worth it. The next day, Lucas couldn't get the incident out of his head. Finally, he decided he needed to talk to Carla about it. It was something that couldn't just be ignored. "Lucas, Carla, can we talk?" She was sitting in the living room, reading a magazine, and looked at him with a casual smile. "Carla, sure, what's wrong?" He hesitated for a moment, but knew he had to be honest. "Lucas, about last night, what your mother said, it hurt me a lot. And the way you laughed. I felt humiliated." Carla frowned, clearly surprised. "Carla, really? It was just a joke. You know how my mother is. I didn't think you would take it so seriously." "Lucas, but I did, Carla. And the fact that you laughed along with her made me feel like you agreed. Like I was some kind of joke to you." She sighed, closing the magazine and turning completely to face him. "Carla, look, I'm sorry if you felt that way, but you need to understand that my mother didn't really mean to offend you. And, well, I just didn't think it was that serious." "Lucas, but it's serious to me. Don't you realize? I felt disrespected in front of your entire family, and instead of supporting me, you laughed." There was an uncomfortable silence as Carla processed what Lucas was saying. For the first time, she seemed to realize the gravity of what had happened. "Carla, I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't mean to hurt you." But despite her words, Lucas felt something was broken. The lack of empathy at a time when he needed her most had left a deep mark. As the days passed, the tension between them continued to grow. The conversation hadn't solved the problem. It had just brought it to the surface more clearly. The small, everyday interactions that had once been comfortable now seemed fraught with an underlying tension. Lucas began to notice other things he hadn't noticed before. How Carla seemed more concerned with other people's opinions than with his, how her priorities seemed to be changing. The small daily irritations and disagreements began to pile up, and doubt began to grow. Lucas thought, do we really have the same goal? Are we on the same page, or are we just trying to keep up appearances? He began to isolate himself emotionally, spending more time at work or in solitary activities. The house, which had once been a cozy home, now seemed like a battlefield where he had to tiptoe around to avoid further conflict. Things reached a critical point when, a month later, Lucas discovered that Carla was confiding in her friends about the situation in a way that made him seem weak and ridiculous. When he overheard a conversation in which he talked about how he took everything too seriously and how his mother was just joking, something inside Lucas broke completely. Lucas, so that's what you think of me? That I'm weak? That I have no sense of humor? Carla, taken aback, tried to justify herself. Carla, no, it's not like that. I was just venting, how hard things have been. Lucas, hard? For you? And what do you think it's been for me? You exposed me, humiliated me, and now you're ridiculing me to your friends. The conversation quickly turned into a heated argument. And for the first time, Lucas began to seriously consider that maybe it was time to rethink his entire life. After this argument, Lucas realized that his marriage was at a point of no return. He began to question himself about what he really wanted for the future. He began to make mental lists, weighing the pros and cons, and trying to imagine what his life would be like if it all ended. One lonely night, sitting on the porch of his house, Lucas came to a difficult but necessary conclusion. Lucas's thoughts, I can't go on living like this. I can't stay in a relationship where I feel unappreciated and disrespected. I need to make a decision for my own good. That night, he decided he needed some time to himself, to think and reevaluate his priorities. He informed Carla that he would be staying at a friend's house for a few weeks, to give himself the space he needed to think. Carla, do you really think this is necessary? We can figure this out together. You know that. Lucas, I need space, Carla. I need to think about what I really want for my future. During this time away, Lucas began to reflect deeply on his life, his marriage, and what he really wanted. He began talking to close friends, seeking advice and emotional support. Each conversation revealed something new, and little by little, he began to realize that the root of the problems was much deeper than a simple misunderstanding. Friend, sometimes we settle for a situation because we're afraid of what comes next. But if you're not happy, you need to consider what really matters to you. These words kept echoing in Lucas's mind. The truth was that he was no longer happy in his marriage. Trust had been shaken, and mutual respect seemed to have been lost along the way. After weeks of reflection, Lucas returned home, determined to have one final talk with Carla. He wanted to be honest about how he felt and see if there was any real chance of saving the marriage, or if it was better to go our separate ways. Lucas, Carla, we need to talk. And this time for real. No beating around the bush. She seemed apprehensive, knowing that something serious was coming. Carla, sure, Lucas. What's going on? Lucas, I've spent a lot of time thinking, and I've come to the conclusion that we can't go on like this. Something's broken between us, and I don't know if it can be fixed. Carla, are you serious? Are you suggesting that we break up? Lucas, I'm not suggesting anything yet, but I'm saying that we need to be honest with each other. This relationship isn't doing us any good, and I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it clearly isn't. The conversation was long and painful. You discussed what had gone wrong, the feelings you had left unsaid, and the expectations you had not met. The lack of support and disrespect were the main points of discussion. Carla, I didn't want things to come to this, Lucas. I thought we could get through this. Lucas, I wanted to believe that too, but things aren't changing. The way you and your mother reacted just showed how alone I am in this. Carla, you always think everything is a personal attack. I was trying to deal with the situation the best way I could. Lucas, it's not just about that, Carla. It's about how you didn't support me when I needed it most. It's about how I can't trust you anymore. You came to the conclusion that perhaps it would be best to go your separate ways. The idea of a separation was not easy, but it seemed to be the only possible solution to the problems you were facing. The separation was a painful process, but also revealing. There were moments of regret, of pain, but also of relief. Lucas began to rediscover who he really was and what he wanted for his life. He began to focus on himself, on his dreams and goals that had been left aside. Lucas, I need to do something for myself now. I need to find myself again. He took up hobbies he had abandoned, such as painting and cycling, and began to reconnect with old friends. Each small achievement and each new challenge helped to build a new perspective on life. Friend, you are different, Lucas. You seem happier and more at peace with yourself. These words of support were a relief. Lucas felt that he was beginning to heal, to rebuild his life, and to look to the future with more optimism. A few months later, while Lucas was busy rebuilding his life, he received an unexpected phone call from Carla. Her voice was filled with a mixture of guilt and concern. "Carla, Lucas, I needed to tell you something. There's something I've never told you before." "Lucas, what is it, Carla?" "Carla, the truth is, I really realized how much I hurt you. And now that you're gone, I see how much of a mistake it all was. Your absence made me reflect on what I've really lost." "Lucas, I don't know what to say. Does this change what happened?" "Carla, it doesn't change the past, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. And more importantly, that I'm working to change and be better." Despite still being hurt, Lucas appreciated Carla's honesty. However, he knew he couldn't go back. The decision to move on had been difficult, but necessary. "Lucas, I understand, Carla, and I appreciate you sharing that. But the truth is I've moved on. I'm finding my own peace now." With a clearer mind and a lighter heart, Lucas began to look to the future with more optimism. The pain of the breakup was still there, but now it was a reminder of how much he had grown and learned about himself. He began to explore new career opportunities and even consider new relationships, but he was taking his time. The important thing was that he was in a place where he could start building a new life, one that was more aligned with his own values and goals. On a sunny afternoon, Lucas was walking through a park, reflecting on the journey he had been on. He found a bench in the shade and sat down, looking out at the horizon with a smile of satisfaction. Lucas thought, sometimes we have to go through difficult times to finally find a right path. And now, I'm ready to face the future with a new perspective. A few months after the breakup, Lucas was in a positive place in his life. He had found his feet and a new balance. His new activities and interests had brought him a new sense of purpose and perspective. During a social event, Lucas met Anna, a charming woman with whom he shared many similarities. They instantly clicked, and Lucas felt a chemistry he had not experienced in a long time. Anna was understanding, funny, and had a genuine outlook on life. "Anna, I really enjoyed spending time with you today, Lucas. It seems like we have a lot in common." "Lucas, I really enjoyed it too. It's nice to find someone I can really connect with." Their relationship blossomed naturally. Anna brought a sense of normalcy and happiness into Lucas's life, something he had been searching for a long time. They began to see each other regularly, and Lucas began to open up to the possibility of a more positive and promising future. However, Lucas's serenity was interrupted when Carla, his ex-wife, reappeared in his life. She showed up without warning, and her meeting with Lucas was fraught with unexpected tension. "Carla, Lucas, I need to talk to you. I don't want to bother you, but it's important." "Lucas, what are you doing here, Carla?" "Carla, I know you're moving on and everything, but there's something I need to tell you. And please listen to me." Lucas was skeptical, but he decided to listen. "Carla, I heard you're with someone else now. And honestly, I'm worried. There are rumors that you might have some fertility issues." "Lucas, that doesn't make sense. What do you mean by that? And why are you bringing this up now?" "Carla, I just want you to know that if you really can't have children, it might be a problem for her too. Maybe you should think twice before moving forward with this relationship." Lucas felt a wave of frustration and distrust. Carla was trying to create doubts and insecurities about Anna, clearly hoping that this would make Lucas reconsider his current life and perhaps come back to her. "Lucas, this has nothing to do with you, Carla. Our relationship is over. I'm fine now, and you should respect that." "Carla, I know, Lucas. I just wanted to help you see the truth before it's too late." With that, Carla walked away, leaving Lucas feeling uneasy. He decided not to take her comments too seriously, but he couldn't completely ignore her concern. When Lucas saw Anna later, he noticed that she was visibly upset. "Anna, Lucas, I need to talk to you. Something happened and I'm worried." "Lucas, sure, what is it?" "Anna, Carla came to me. She told me that you might have fertility problems and that I should be careful with you." Lucas was stunned and tried to calm himself before answering. "Lucas, this is absurd. Carla is just trying to cause trouble. Our relationship is over, and what she says is baseless. Don't let this get to you." "Anna, I don't know what to think. I really like you, but these things make me feel insecure." Why would she say something like that? "Lucas, because she still has unresolved feelings and wants to see you and me separate. Don't let this get in your way. If necessary, we can do tests to clear up any doubts." Anna seemed calmer with Lucas's assurance, but her doubts persisted. They decided that the best thing would be to temporarily separate and focus on clarifying the situation. Lucas agreed to do tests to make sure everything was okay and to give Anna the reassurance she needed. Lucas underwent a series of tests, and the results were conclusive. He was healthy and had no fertility problems. This confirmation was a relief, and he shared it with Anna. Lucas, the test came back normal. There is no problem at all. I think this should show how strong our relationship is and how it is based on mutual trust. Anna smiled with relief, although there was still a hint of insecurity. Anna, I'm glad to know that everything is fine, but I confess that I'm still afraid of outside interference. Lucas, I understand your fear, but our relationship must be based on trust and mutual respect. Let's face this together. Determined to resolve the situation once and for all, Lucas sought out Carla for a final conversation. He was tired of the manipulation and wanted to put an end to any interference in his life once and for all. Lucas, Carla, we need to talk again. The way you've been acting is not acceptable. You're trying to manipulate the situation and create problems where there aren't any. Carla, I only wanted the best for you, Lucas. I didn't think this was harmful. Lucas, you need to understand that your behavior is causing real harm. There's no room for you in my life anymore. I'm fine and moving forward, and I want you to do the same. Carla, I just wanted you to know the truth. Maybe I went about this the wrong way. Lucas, the truth is not something to be used to manipulate. If you really want to help, then give us space and stop trying to interfere. With the issue resolved, Lucas and Anna were able to focus on building a healthy and promising relationship. The difficult experience had strengthened their trust, and they had learned to face challenges as a team. Anna, I'm glad we got through this together, Lucas. I feel like we're stronger now. Lucas, me too. What we went through helped us see how important we are to each other. As the months passed, Lucas and Anna continued to deepen their relationship, finding new ways to grow together and support each other. Lucas's past with Carla became a valuable lesson, but not an anchor that held him down. Lucas had learned that in order to move forward, one had to face and overcome difficulties, and he was now ready to enjoy the future with someone who truly valued and respected him. That's today's story so far, with more updates to come soon. Click the like button and subscribe to the channel to help Mr. Ink. Until the next video. Bye.